Yeah, already skipping that far. I'm not sure if this is pronounced lemon or lemon. But this is basically Zemuria's equivalent of Switzerland. Welcome to Gehenna, otherwise known as the Sky SC Prologue. Yeah, you might notice it still has a new look here. We'll get to that later. Unfortunately, that's actually not the name of anything that Estelle has in this game. And hey, Annalise is back! I told you she'd be more important later. That actually is the name of a craft that Annalise has. And yes, you will recognize the name 8 Leaf if you know of Cold Steel. I'll also get to that later. Well, yeah, there may be some broken characters who have an I win button move, Comfort, but not anymore because Comfort, well, you'll see why later on in this game, but yeah. As I alluded to in the first game, they nerfed Comfort really hard in this one, but again, as I keep saying, we'll get to that later. And this is someone we actually don't know of. I was actually going to say something like you'd rather beat each other up, and then they go ahead and say that. I seem to have this uncanny tendency to predict dialogue in this game. That might be because the lines in the game just tend to stick with me from earlier playthroughs and I just subconsciously remember them. That's probably why, and it's probably a testament to how good the writing is. I still think like the Trails series, both in terms of original writing and in terms of localization quality, is just some of the best in all of gaming. And yeah, Kurt's here. If you remember from the first game, Kurt was one of the senior braces. We met him a few times, mainly during the last chapter of the first one. He had some dealings with Cassius too. Yeah, looks like we're gonna have some brutal training in our future. If you haven't already figured out what this place is, it's gonna be explained pretty soon. Okay, a little detail that I don't think we heard about in the last one. So she's like Estelle's, to use anime terminology, senpai, but only very slightly. And flashback time. So, yes, it's actually an entire training ground for braces. It's also pretty huge. Yeah, they teach the whole package there. So not too far removed from whatever Josh was doing. So, in both gameplay and story, Estelle is going to be alone for a while now. Estelle has to learn to stand on her own. Without Josh or with us, things are going to be a little harder. Actually, quite a lot harder. So, this was actually alluded to if you talk to Shara during the ending sequence of the first game. She mentions going clothes shopping with Estelle at some point in the future. Yeah, that was setting up for this. I don't think, like, bright orange and dark green is a particularly girly set of colours. Honestly, this line kind of sums up Annalise. She's a very interesting character. She kind of fits what TV tropes refers to as girly bruiser, in that she is incredibly girly, like extremely stereotypically girly, but she's also an absolute terror on the battlefield at the same time. And I don't know why, but I've always really liked characters like that. It's just always an archetype that I've been kind of fond of. I mean, you can probably tell if you've seen me play Three Houses with how much I like Hilda, because Hilda's incredibly similar. Oh no, you've started Annalise talking about cute things. This is the other line that sums up Annalise. It's just, I don't know, I just love the contrast between someone who's all, like, going on about, like, adorableness and is also just incredibly powerful, as a physical attacker, as you'll see soon. Oh no, Estelle, don't say that. But now that you've said it, it's going to happen. It's going to happen and you've jinxed it. Says the one who's only been a senior for half a year. Well, I mean, her boyfriend ran off to hunt down an all-powerful secret society on his own. Why wouldn't she be super determined to find him? I'm sorry, but Estelle's not upstaging anyone in the cute department anytime soon. And that's probably the way she likes it. I'm not trying to insult her or anything. We'll still be seeing more of Annalise as this chapter goes on. Yeah, that's very true. And so with that, we regain control, and we can actually see full artwork of Estelle's new outfit if we check here. I'm just gonna go straight to Estelle's room, which I believe is the one with, yeah, the one with the flower next to it. Yeah, Kurt seems to be pretty serious about this kind of thing. So, in the words of a certain incarnation of Link, great, I'll grab my stuff! There's one thing those games are good for, it's making fun of. They certainly gave people a lot of material. So we have Brake Rod and Enhanced Leather, and Reinforced Boots. And only 1,000 Mirror, so kind of a pathetic starting sum, but gotta start somewhere. And that's all automatically equipped, you don't need to worry about putting all that on. And hey there, Phyllis, what's going on? Wow, it took Estelle that long just to get stuff out of her backpack. And hi there, Kurt. Well, at least they're not launching us into counter-terrorism operations this early. Balth... I keep wanting to call that Balthazar channel, but no, it's the Bolstar channel. Nothing like repurposing ancient ruins as a trading facility. Yeah, Kurt's one of those I believe in learning on the job kind of people. And here we're gonna get to something that's actually really, really interesting. It's something that tends to inevitably happen in RPG sequels, but this game handles it really well, I find. One additional slot, and Estelle's is balanced on either side, which in practice is actually not that great, but still. It's at least better than Agate's typical setup. Well, that's some job perk. Well, I was about to say there's a catch, and Kurt says it for me. So what Kurt means is... Yep, they're actually justifying why you can't carry over your old quartz from the previous game. Why you have to start from square one. Again, it's something that a lot of RPG sequels do, but few of them justify it like this. No, my Action 3 and Cast 2! It's harder for us, we don't even know what kind of quartz collection you had before because you weren't even playable in the last game. And that is very true. There are a ton of new arts introduced in SC. And, there was actually a bit of foreshadowing to that in the previous game. So yeah, remember Lawrence? Remember how he used a whole bunch of arts that we couldn't have access to? Some people in the comments section were being like, oh, that's such an annoying case of the AI being a cheating jerk like usual. Here's the thing though, it's actually justified in canon. Oh yeah, that attack that did 0 damage if he was debuffed. They're referring to Silver Thorn, by the way. But, yeah. Pretty much all of Lieutenant Lawrence's arts, the only one that is actually a cheating one and exclusive to him was Earthguard EX. Everything else that he used are arts that we ourselves will be able to use in this game. So Lawrence wasn't just cheating because he was an enemy. He had access to new model augments via the Society. And that does kind of sum up how this game works. You are very weak early on, and that's why this game's early game is absolutely brutal. But you do become much stronger starting with about the halfway point of the game. And you only get better and better from there. Once we start getting these new arts, things do even out. But until then, it's going to be an uphill climb. Essentially why the early game of this one is so difficult is because since the levels carry over directly from the first game into the second, you start this one at the level that you would have ended the first game. Because of that, you're essentially fighting FC endgame tier enemies with FC early game tier quartz and arts. And as you can tell, that makes things a bit of a problem. And so, our old quartz collection is useless. But we get some free Seaforth to make some new quartz. Oh yeah, remember to read this. I'll probably just quickly flick through it, just for your benefits. You can pause the video and look at some of the art descriptions. Also, check out the quartz requirements for old art as well, because some of them have been changed. By change, I mean they nerfed White Kahana and Ariel. Because why wouldn't they? Those were ridiculous in the last game. So, just a brief tutorial segment. But we also get these. These are our rewards for getting to the highest bracer rank in the previous game via a file transfer. We get Glove Gear, Celestial Balm, Emergency Puppet, this one is very important, and Luck Quartz, also very important. Now you can get the Luck Quartz via other means, but it won't come until much later in the game. And luck definitely helps out early on. You'll see what it does when we first get access to customizing our augments, which should be very soon. I'll just have to wait for Kurt to stop talking. So, I've never actually done a non-100% file transfer, so I actually don't know which ones are specifically exclusive to the highest rank. But I do know that they're all pretty useful in their own rights. But you don't want to equip the Emergency Puppet immediately. You want to save that for a special occasion. Like the Luck Quartz, you can get more of that later on, but not for quite a while. And so we get the Senior Bracer Notebook. Alternatively to that tutorial, we can just go ahead and press the Notebook button here. So, yeah, we've got a big rundown of the general bracer code, a whole ton of these things. We also have some new sections, like fishing, which we'll get to a little bit later. If you look closely, you might see some other status ailments here that were not in the first game. And here's a rundown of magic. Look how many earth spells there are here. there's a full team Earth Wall, but it's really not worth it because Earth Wall itself is generally enough of an AoE to catch your whole party. Yeah. A lot more of these. And look at the quartz requirements for some of the higher ones, like Cocytus, 25 water, 12 wind, and 5 space. And we will actually be getting those kind of numbers later on in the game. Yes, the area requires 1 space this time. You definitely want to try looking at this because, yeah, White Kahana requires a lot more stuff now. Clock RPX is still good. Pay attention to Clock Down in particular. That one's going to be very useful later on. Death Scream and Abyss Fall are going to be our mainstay spellcasting later on in the game. And we also have access to some new buffs like A-Crest and Zodiac. So, yeah. Also got a bit of a rundown of what these things are. There's a few things here that the game has not quite gone into just yet. In fact, I don't want to look at those just yet because they're kind of spoilers. I'd rather introduce new quartz as we get them. And once again, we have the recipe book. You can cook up food at any time, and this food is generally more efficient than most healing items that you can buy. There's a new thing that's been added to food in this game, but I'll get to that one later because it's particularly useful to the boss fight at the end of this chapter, which, by the way, is possibly the hardest boss in the game. I'm not kidding. I'm looking forward to showing that one. So, basic tutorial on cooking. Like the first game, there is an achievement for getting all of the recipes, but in this case, you actually have to cook all the recipes as well as just getting them. And as usual, Estelle has magic taste buds that let her instantly learn the recipe for anything she eats. So here's the recipe book. Right now we have Nature's Bounty. And you want to save most of the ingredients you were given for a recipe that will come later in the prologue. In fact, while you're here, you might actually want to buy stuff now. I may as well get LaBelle Musician 1. We can also buy Herb Sandwich. That'll get us a new recipe once we eat that. And as for these ingredients, okay, I need to go ahead and look up what I need to buy here. Okay, I need fresh milk, fresh eggs, olive oil, milled flour, and a few other things that I can't buy. Okay, yeah, trust me, there's a method to my madness. I'll be using those ingredients later, but you definitely want to stock up on those ingredients now. Because the prologue of this game is kind of sadistic for a certain reason. Like I said, I don't want to spoil that just yet. So, yeah, basically everything here is stuff that works the same way as it did in the first game. I'd recommend you watch, I think it was part 3 of, parts 1 and 3 of my original, my playthrough of FC if you want to know how augments and quartz work. They are kind of complicated, I don't want to go into them too much here, but upgrading slots is in fact a new feature. So everyone in this game begins with all their slots already open. Instead of opening slots, you upgrade existing slots. Every slot you upgrade, like Robert's saying, increases your maximum EP. But there are some quartz that are like considered level 1 or level 2 quartz, or even level 3, that require your slots to be of a particular level before you can insert them into that slot. And they're going to force you to have at least one healing art. And that requires you to have water quartz. So, let's make some quartz. You can also buy some things from here. And yeah, upgrading slots works exactly the same way that opening slots does in the last game. You need Seepeth of every type to do it. Right now we can't afford that, so let's go ahead and make 1 HP 1. And something that I should mention here regarding achievements is that Action 1, you want to make that a priority because that's amazing. There is no achievement for getting all quartz in this game, so I don't need to track that, thankfully. The only collectibles that do matter are one particular series of books and also chests. Basically just chests. There's no achievement for weapons or armor either. So yeah, less things for me to track. We can actually get a pretty nice view of the canyon, which is pretty cool. So I believe, yeah, Kurt's all the way over here, and he's not going to let you leave until you have at least the ability to use one healing art. You have to have equipped them to your Ornament, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's go for, I guess I'll put the HP 1 on Estelle. Now, yes, there actually is a bit of a catch to the defense quartz now. They lower your strength stats. I'll put defense on Estelle because she's kind of more of a tank. Unfortunately, Annalise has a couple of wind-restricted slots. I guess I'll put an attack 1 on you too. I think you'll benefit the most from action 1. And you'll take hit 1 as well. Yeah, notice that hit 1 actually lowers your agility, which affects your evade rates. Evasion's very unreliable in this game, so yeah, this is not Cold Steel. Cold Steel got ridiculous with evasion, but anyway. Also, this is the Luck Quartz. This one is one of your rewards for a file transfer, and it increases enemy drop rates by 30%. That is, believe it or not, extremely good in the prologue, and I'll tell you why a bit later on. It also gives you access to some arts like Clock Up, which is pretty useful. So now we have the ability to use healing arts. Let's head to our first dungeon. And unlike the Roland Sewers in the previous game, this one's actually a pretty substantial one. Sweet goddess, not yet. Now, staying here for a little bit until you're fully prepared might not be a terrible idea. There was a reason why I bought stuff from Phyllis before. And don't worry, we'll read the LaBelle news later. For now, I mostly just want to get the tutorial covered. And so, we have our map of the Local, and here we can go to either the Guild Lodge where we already are, or the, not Balthazar, the Balstar Channel. We can also see a few previews of the other locations we're visiting. We do sadly have reused music for this place, and we do have a free heal point, which is nice. Yeah, thankfully they're not nearly as confusing as the sewers beneath Grand Cell. Let me guess, if we read them, we instantly fail. No, they are not, especially on hard mode. And that's a new feature to this game. And we have the monster guide. This will show us info on any enemies we fight, though the info's pretty minor unless you equip something that lets you analyze enemies, which we sadly don't have access to yet. So anytime we need healing, we can come back here and do it for free. So, here we have Estelle and Annalise in our party. I forgot to show off Annalise here. So, as you can see, Annalise is a little stronger than Estelle in terms of physical offense. She always starts at level 40 as well. And she uses light short swords and already has a pretty good selection of crafts. She's also reasonably fast. She's basically a solid physical attacker overall. You might also want to go into tactics. I don't think I ever explained this to you actually. And set not character position, that's for the field. And set your position in battle. I like to put Annalise as close as possible to the front line because one of her main weaknesses is that she has little to no range capability at all, and that's going to be a major problem later in the prologue, trust me. So, here we have our first fight. So, they give you the option of going over the full combat tutorial, or just explaining the new feature to this game. I like that, because, you know, people who played the last game will already know everything. But you get more fights if you choose to go over everything, so I want to do this anyway. And that's the typical RPG justification for redoing a tutorial. I will be skipping most of the overt tutorials here. But we do have a totally new battle theme. We can't use arts or craft at this point, so all we need to do is just straight up attack enemies. Pretty simple enough, and these things go down like complete wimps. And they don't even do anything either. And certain turns will confer bonuses.
Oh yeah!
It might not be that obvious just yet, but Annalise is voiced by Cassandra Lee Moritz. Another reason why I really like her, she's one of my favourite voice actresses. It's also a bit different to the kind of voice she normally does for characters, so that's pretty cool. Confident penciling. I always love that. And yeah, information gets recorded, and as you can see here, you don't see much in terms of their raw stats unless you analyze them, and we don't have the ability to do that just yet. So that's a bit of a problem. And so, magic tutorial, or arts as it's called in this universe. So, like in the first game, arts have casting time. They also have elements. These things here are weak to fire, so let's go ahead and go for a fireballs. Estelle unfortunately does not have fire, but we do have access to time, space, and mirage elements. All of them in this game are effectively non-elemental. They do neutral damage regardless of the enemy's resistances. Oh, great, that attack. Okay, so whenever I see that, I think of Aquaman from Mega Man 8 and his horrendous voice. With him going, "Water cannon!" You know what, that's probably actually better than his voice from the actual game. Which is sad. Anyway, let's go for a fireballs again. And Estelle can demonstrate just how bad physical attacks are on these things. Yeah, they don't do too well. So they give you enemies with very high physical defense just to show off how good arts are.
I am invincible! Or am I?
That's another one of my favorite Annalise quotes. In case you can't tell, I like Annalise, and I'm glad that she's in our party now. I probably should have gone back and healed, but oh well. So now it's time for crafts. Now, I should mention that while in the first game, arts were vastly superior to crafts most of the time, and also in this one, they're kind of combining the S-craft tutorial with a regular craft tutorial. They did buff physical crafts quite a bit in this game. Arts are still better though, to a considerable extent, but crafts are not completely useless. Physical party members are still a bit underpowered in this one, but they're not as underpowered as they were in the first game. So that's a bit of a welcome change. So all of this stuff was, you know, the kind of things we learned in the previous game. So crafts cost CP. And here's something really cool about this one. This game does not follow the bag of spilling trope when it comes to crafts. Everyone starts with all the crafts they had in the previous game. And I love that so much. It's just really cool. Nobody forgot any moves since the previous game. Instead, we'll be learning new moves or upgraded versions of existing ones. For now though, I want to go ahead and try out Estelle's morale craft, because it's had one very considerable change.
Guys, come on.
Estelle now says guys before she says come on. Not really sure why they changed that, but yeah, that's a thing. Anyway, Annalise has some totally new crafts here. 8-Leaf Blitz, which is a single targeting attack. Sword Wind Slash, which is a small AoE around a single enemy. Fallen Leaves, which is a delay attack, but it's fairly expensive. And Pedal Dance, which does not cause a bunch of 120 base power special grass type moves on the enemies if you're going by later generations where it got buffed, and confuse you afterwards. No. This actually buffs your strength by 50% and lowers your defense by 30%. So a bit of a risk, but there is a reward behind it. By getting 100 or more CP, we can use an S-Craft. S-Crafts are useful in that they can be used at any time in the turn order, and I've shortcutted them to the right analog stick on my controller, I believe, so if I press, I believe it's, yeah, if I press, yeah, there we go, I'm using it right now. You can also click on the button with the keyboard. This one has an AoE on it, so let's see what your S-Craft is like, Annalise. It's pretty standard, but it's still cool. So, I was actually only half joking when I was talking about Estelle's morale only having a minor change. Now, I believe that in this game, the attack buff from morale does not buff magic anymore, it only buffs physical attacks. So I'm pretty sure it buffing magic in the first game was actually a bug and not supposed to happen. Also, there's Hurricane, an AoE attack centered on Estelle, but it's a little weaker than a regular attack. It seems to be a bit stronger now than it was in the first one.
Oh yeah!
It's still not fantastic, but it's not as bad as it was in the first game. And I'm gonna go back and heal, so see you here later. And so, with this last enemy, it's time for the new feature. Chain Crafts. Now, in my first playthrough, I didn't use these nearly as much as I should have, and I totally underestimated how good they were. Chain crafts require a lot of circumstances to go right for them to actually work, but when they do work, they can actually outdamage S-crafts in some situations. So here we go. I'm actually going to show the tutorial this time because these are actually new. You can find them in your crafts menu. In this case, Chain 1. Up to 2 people charge forth and deal damage. So the person who initiates the Chain 1 has to pay 20 CP. Then you have to choose another party member to join in the attack. The participant who joins in has to pay 30 CP. So the more people participate, the more the cost goes up. Going up to 40 for 3 people, and then going up to 40 for the third person, and then finally 50 for the fourth person. But we won't even have access to that level of chain until much later in the game. So now we choose Annalise, and now we can select an enemy within range. Now the AoE is only small because we only have 2 people participating. The more people participate, the greater the AoE is. But at this point we can only have 2 people participate anyway. If you change your mind about who you want in the chain craft, just press the cancel button, and you can go back to selecting your teammates. So, let's chain.
Let's do this thing.
So yeah, that hit both of those enemies. A little harder than a regular attack, I think. Chain 2 is not particularly spectacular, but higher levels of chains, like I said, they can actually end up out-damaging S-Crafts. I should probably take out the next one to move. And Estelle, wow, we already have access to Earthguard? That actually might be a really good thing here. So Earthguard puts up a barrier that blocks the next attack directed at the character that it targets. It blocks both physical and magical attacks. So it's kind of overpowered, but it is going to be very, very necessary, especially on the higher difficulties. And especially once NPCs start getting into the mix, but thankfully NPCs are not going to be joining us now. I may as well show this. Usually healing spells have lower casting time than offensive ones. Also, they have buffed all the healing spells in this game. Tyr, the lowest level of healing, now heals 1000 HP. They've basically escalated the stats and levels of both you and the enemies, and they've escalated the healing amounts to compensate for that. So yeah, regular old Tyr is now 1000 HP healing. And yeah, if you don't know, healing is always fixed regardless of your magic stats, so it's actually very beneficial to put healing spells on your physical attackers, just because their low magic won't even make a difference. And with that, we're actually done with the tutorial. So, heading through here, we're in the dungeon proper. And with that, I think it's about time we leave things for the next part. So, I will see you next time, and more of the case of the mysterious twin shadows! Anyway, see you next time for the real Ballstar channel.